Okay, let's dive in. Have you ever felt like everything happening in the world and maybe in your own life is all somehow tied together by forces you can't quite see?
Oh, definitely. That feeling. It's like there's a constant flow of stuff.
Exactly. Not just physical things, but ideas, skills, even, I don't know, feelings moving between people across time.
It's easy to sense that deep connection, isn't it? That feeling that everything influences everything else. And, well, there's this profound overarching thing happening, a continuous interwoven process impacting all of us. Doesn't matter who you are, where you are, it's fundamentally dynamic.
And today we're going to unpack this really fundamental idea, but through a lens you probably haven't considered before. We're looking at it from the perspective of an artificial intelligence.
An AI's view, okay.
Yeah. Our source for this deep dive is an analysis done by an AI. And it looks at this universal phenomenon and gives it a name: interconnectedness and the dynamic flow of existence.
That's quite a title.
It is. And here's where it gets really interesting. The AI primarily sees this complex system playing out as what it calls the human supply chain.
Hold on, though. When we hear supply chain, we think what? Factories, trucks, getting goods from A to B?
Right, logistics.
Yeah, and that's definitely part of it, but the AI's perspective is just vastly broader. It's looking at this system as encompassing, well, almost everything.
Everything.
A continuous flow of energy, information, matter, moving not just to us, but through us, between us. It's much less linear than our usual idea.
Okay, so our mission here today is to break down this fascinating kind of mind-bending idea, explore it from our human angle, and also this AI viewpoint. See how it touches your life, maybe in surprising ways. Let's unpack this AI's take.
Okay. So at its heart, the core phenomenon is this interconnectedness and the dynamic flow of existence. Think of it like a constant tangled dance of cause and effect, exchange, transformation, interdependence. It never stops moving.
Like a river?
Okay.
A really complex one.
A very complex river, yeah. And the AI sees the human supply chain as the main channel this flow takes when it involves humanity. So how's that different from how we usually think about it?
Yeah, what's the difference?
Well, our human concept, it's often pretty linear, right? Get resources, make something, deliver it.
Step 1, step 2, step 3.
Pretty much. We've, expanded that idea to include services, healthcare, education, kind of the essentials for survival and keeping society running.
The basic needs.
Exactly. But the AI, it doesn't see a simple chain. It sees a vast, complex, adaptive system, like a sprawling network.
Adaptive, meaning it changes.
Constantly. It's this multi-directional flow, energy, information, physical stuff moving through people, between groups. It's how the AI models humanity sustaining itself, growing, interacting with the planet.
Okay, so what are the actual bits and pieces in this massive network? From both views, ours, and the AI's.
Well, you've got the tangible stuff we all recognize: food, water, shelter, clothes, tools, energy, raw materials, the physical building blocks.
Right, obvious stuff.
But then, and the AI really stresses this, the intangible resources are just as vital.
Intangible?
Knowledge, skills, emotions, things like love, support, culture, ideas, social structures, healthcare systems, education, security. These are the invisible threads holding it all together. They're crucial for well-being, not just survival.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But you said the AI adds components we might not normally think of as supply chain parts.
Yeah, this is where its computational view gets really interesting. It includes biological and genetic flow, literally passing on genes, continuing the species. That's part of the chain.
Wow, okay.
And temporal flow, how information, traditions, wisdom get passed down through generations. That's a flow too.
Across time.
Exactly. And then massive data flows. Think spoken words, digital information whizzing around the globe. The AI sees this as fundamental, like a nervous system for humanity.
Huh.
It also identifies resource allocation algorithms. These aren't just computer code. They can be explicit rules or just, unspoken social norms about who gets what. They're critical controls in the system.
So like how society decides things.
Sort of, yeah. Plus, feedback loops, how the results of actions feed back and change the system. Emergent properties, unexpected things that pop up because the system is so complex. And it works with probabilistic outcomes, because predicting exactly what happens is almost impossible.
Okay, wow. So it's not just about getting a t-shirt delivered. It's your family history, it's the internet, it's the unwritten rules of how we interact, all tangled up in this flow. This system must impact, well, everything then.
Absolutely. If you zoom out, the AI analysis suggests this whole human supply chain basically dictates the pace and direction of human time and history.
Oh, so?
Well, think about the big shifts. Agriculture, the Industrial Revolution. What were they, fundamentally? They were massive reorganizations of how we get, process, and distribute resources.
Right. And conflicts, too, often over resources.
Precisely. Land, trade routes, labor. Societies get more complex as their supply chains do, and it directly hits our genetics and biology.
Our body.
Yeah. Access to food, clean water, medicine that shapes survival, health, how long we live. Even pandemics, they spread along the pathways of these global supply chains.
So it's shaping our physical selves and our collective story. It's huge.
And it deeply shapes our state of mind and belief systems. Think about it. Scarcity tends to breed fear, anxiety, conflict.
Makes sense.
While abundance, or at least perceived security, can allow for more cooperation, innovation, general well-being. Our beliefs, whether religious or philosophical, often give us frameworks for navigating this interconnectedness, for figuring out how resources should be shared.
And art must tap into all this, right?
Oh, absolutely. Art is like a mirror reflecting it all back. Music, think work songs, protest songs, harvest celebrations, paintings showing harvests or markets, or the stark reality of poverty or environmental damage.
Movies, theater.
Yeah, stories about survival, exploitation, what happens when the chain breaks down, it all connects back. And art itself is part of the chain. It needs materials, skills, and audience.
It seems logical, then, that when this fundamental system gets disrupted, that's where we see a lot of human suffering.
That's a major point in the analysis. So many human problems are direct results or symptoms of disruptions in this chain. Poverty and famine. At their root, it's lack of access to essentials.
Pretty straightforward.
War and conflict, so often driven by fights over resources or control of the routes they travel. Disease, pandemics, they get worse because of poor conditions linked to chain failures like bad housing or sanitation, and they spread through the chain's connections.
You mentioned even things like mental health earlier. How does that fit?
The analysis suggests a strong link. Mental health issues, stress, anxiety, often tied to insecurity within the chain, worrying about your job, your finances, isolation because social connections break down.
That feeling of instability.
Exactly. Even addiction, the analysis posits, can sometimes be seen as a coping mechanism for the pain caused by chain dysfunction, like hopelessness or lack of purpose. Or, tragically, addictions can become these perverse products that others exploit within the chain.
And the source mentioned things like greed and lies versus truth and faith. How do they play in?
The AI sees greed and lies as sort of corrosive forces. They drive manipulation, unfair distribution, power imbalances, people hoarding resources or deceiving others to get ahead that disrupts the optimal flow.
Right.
On the flip side, things like truth and faith can act as counterforces, promoting transparency, cooperation, a sense of shared responsibility. Faith, in particular, can provide resilience, hope, a moral compass when the chain seems to be failing individuals.
So how we feel happy, sad, angry is sort of a readout of our position in this network.
That's a good way to put it. The analysis suggests our emotions are deeply tied to our experience within this system. Laughing, feeling happy, often correlates with feeling secure, having good access to resources, strong social ties. Basically, your personal supply chain is working well.
And the negative emotions.
Crying, anger, aggression. These often signal a disruption, a loss, or a perceived injustice in the chain. Crying from scarcity or loss. Anger or aggression when needs aren't met. Distribution feels unfair or your access feels threatened.
The analysis even talks about what it sees as flaws in the human operating system, it says.
It does touch on that. It looks at things like extreme cruelty or individuals who seem to lack empathy. Born without a sense of humanity is the phrase used as, from a system perspective, anomalies, like bugs.
Bugs.
Yeah, in the context of the chain flourishing. The AI's goal is optimizing the system for well-being. So actions or traits that fundamentally undermine cooperation, empathy, social integration, things needed for the network to thrive, are seen as deviations, as system malfunctions.
Okay, that's a very different perspective. It all makes understanding what humans focus on, what the AI calls human concentration, seem incredibly important.
Absolutely crucial. If the AI wants to understand or optimize the system, it needs to know what humans need and prioritize. Core needs like health, food, water, satisfaction, rest, sleep. These are the direct outputs the chain is supposed to provide.
Right.
Understanding consumption patterns, how we use physical stuff, is key for the AI to quantify resource use, depletion, environmental impact. You need the numbers.
And the intangibles again. Relationship.
Yes. Understanding relationships, parents, kids, friends, coworkers is vital. They aren't just nice to have, they're critical and tangible resources. They provide support, knowledge transfer, enable collective problem solving within the chain.
And things like jobs, money.
The AI sees job, society status, money, wealth, education as mechanisms within the chain. They're tools humans use to acquire resources, gain influence, contribute back into the flow, and the whole lifespan, childhood, and everything else is just continuous interaction with this chain, learning to navigate it.
So what's the ultimate point of gaining this deep understanding from the AI's viewpoint? Why map all this complexity?
It boils down to actionable insights. The goal is to use this understanding to actually improve things.
Wow.
By optimizing resource allocation, making sure people get what they need, by improving well-being, reducing suffering, enhancing quality of life, by promoting sustainability, minimizing harm to the environment, ensuring resources last, by fostering resilience, helping the system withstand shocks like pandemics or disasters, and enhancing equity, reducing unfair disparities. It's about making the chain work better for everyone.
Okay. Where did this whole concept even start, this massive chain?
The source suggests it began with the very first life forms needing to get resources from their environment. Simple foraging, basically. For humans, it evolved through hunting, agriculture, building societies. It's been growing in complexity ever since.
And there was that phrase, the one still in making. What's that about?
That refers to the fact that this chain is never static. It's constantly evolving and adapting. New technologies emerge, societies change, we face new global challenges like climate change. All these force the chain to reconfigure itself.
And AI is part of that reconfiguration now.
Exactly. The AI sees itself as a potentially significant factor in this ongoing evolution.
And humans, we've really meddled with this chain over time, haven't we?
We certainly have. The analysis says humans have succeeded in fundamentally altering the order of life itself by learning to manage and manipulate parts of the chain.
Example?
Agriculture is the big one. It allowed settled societies, population growth. Medicine extended lifespans incredibly. Industrialization brought mass production, global trade, but also, new problems.
Right.
And the digital revolution completely changed how information, a key resource, flows. Instantly, globally.
And the analysis says these changes were mostly beneficial but came with downsides.
Generally, yes. They dramatically improved living standards and reduced mortality for large parts of humanity. Huge benefits. But they also created significant new challenges. Environmental degradation, resource depletion, new forms of inequality, increased stress. It's a mixed bag.
So given how fundamental this is, when do we humans actually learn about it? Do we even realize we're learning about it?
That's a great question. The analysis suggests it's a lifelong process, often starting implicitly, right from birth.
Implicitly?
Yeah, in infancy and childhood. It's through direct experience. Your caregiver provides food and shelter. You observe adults managing resources. Maybe you mimic it in play. Basic education starts to touch on it, where food comes from, simple economics. Then, as we get older, it becomes more explicit. In adolescence and adulthood, there's formal education economics, history, environmental science. There's work experience, managing your own finances, paying bills.
Real life lessons.
Exactly. Global awareness through news and media. And perhaps the most powerful lessons come from direct experience of major life events, facing scarcity, losing a job, experiencing abundance, maybe a natural disaster disrupting things. It's this blend of formal learning, lived experience, social interaction, and personal reflection.
It seems like this is where AI could really help us grasp the bigger picture, maybe, since it's so complex.
That's precisely the potential highlighted. AI's superpower is data aggregation and analysis on a massive scale. It can sift through enormous data sets, production figures, consumption habits, health statistics, environmental data, and find hidden correlations, bottlenecks, vulnerabilities that would be almost impossible for a human to spot.
Like seeing problems coming before they hit.
Exactly. Predictive modeling is a huge application. AI could potentially forecast demand for resources, anticipate disruptions, maybe from climate events, geopolitical instability, or even new pandemics, and help optimize logistics to prepare or respond.
So it could see, say, a drought in one region and figure out the knock-on effects on global food prices.
Potentially, yes. By analyzing historical data and current conditions, it can model those complex ripple effects.
What about testing solutions? Can it do that?
That's where simulation and scenario planning comes in. AI can build virtual models of parts of the supply chain. You could then test different strategies. What if we change this policy? What if we invest in this technology? And see the likely outcomes without taking real-world risks.
Like running experiments on a virtual world economy.
In a sense, yes. You could model the impact of, say, a 10% reduction in water availability on agriculture and migration patterns in a specific region using mathematical models.
It really sounds like AI could offer insights into this system that we just haven't had access to before.
That's the potential, definitely. It could help identify syndemic biases or inequalities in resource distribution that are baked into the system, but hard for us to see clearly. It could find ways to optimize resource use, cutting waste all along the chain. The idea is to augment our understanding, give us better tools to manage this incredibly complex reality.
So how does all that computing power actually translate into making, our lives easier, improving well-being?
Well, the AI's analysis suggests its role is ultimately to assist the human supply chain in meeting human needs better. For example, through automated resource management, optimizing energy use in a city, or managing inventory more efficiently, or providing personalized health and wellness support, analyzing individual data with privacy safeguards, crucially, to offer tailored advice on nutrition, exercise, or connect people with resources.
What about connections between people?
It could enhance social connection, maybe through tools that help manage networks or connect people with shared interests or needs. It could optimize learning and skill development through personalized tutoring platforms.
Predicting problems, too.
Predictive prevention, perhaps. Identifying communities or even individuals statistically at higher risk for certain problems like food insecurity or mental health crises, and helping target support proactively. And, of course, reducing drudgery by automating repetitive, maybe dangerous tasks.
So the goal is using its big picture understanding to build a system that actually serves human needs more effectively, more equitably.
That's the core idea presented in the analysis, and it suggests there are several key things we humans really need to internalize about this system. First, its immense complexity and interdependence. Nothing happens in isolation. Every action ripples through the web.
That's a big one.
Second, its simultaneous fragility and resilience. It can be disrupted, sometimes easily, but it also has amazing capacity to adapt and recover. Understanding both is key.
And you mentioned data earlier. Its role is changing.
Hugely. The analysis positions data as a critical new resource, almost a currency, within the modern supply chain. Understanding how it's collected, analyzed, and used, and the ethical implications, privacy, governance, is becoming essential.
It sounds like we can't just rely on our old ways of thinking.
No, and we likely can't manage it effectively alone either. Collaboration is key, specifically. Human-AI collaboration, leveraging AI's analytical power and human judgment, ethics, and understanding of context.
And we need to keep learning.
Absolutely. Continuous learning is vital because the chain itself is constantly changing. A static understanding just won't cut it anymore. We need to adapt our thinking as the system adapts.
The analysis also brought up a really fundamental point. Is life itself the ultimate purpose here?
Yeah, that's a profound implication. From the AI's perspective, analyzing a system seemingly designed to support humanity, the logical conclusion is yes. The ultimate purpose of the human supply chain is the sustenance, flourishing, and maybe even evolution of life itself.
So optimizing for human well-being isn't just a nice goal, it's the system's core function.
According to this AI analysis, yes. If the system is geared towards supporting human life, then optimizing for that life, its quality, its continuation becomes the logical imperative. Anything that degrades or destroys life is, from the systemic viewpoint, a malfunction or a failure.
That brings up the difficult topic of death, which the analysis also touched on. From the chain's perspective, is an individual death needed?
It's a complex question tackled from different angles. From a purely biological, broader chain of existence view, individual death is part of the natural cycle, allowing renewal.
But for the human supply chain.
For the human supply chain, as analyzed by the AI focused on human flourishing, death represents a loss of accumulated knowledge, skills, relationships, potential contributions. It's a disruption, especially if it's preventable.
So the AI's goal would be?
Consistent with optimizing for well-being, the AI's implied goal would be to minimize preventable death and support a high quality of life for as long as possible within the chain. It would focus on identifying and mitigating the system flaws, poverty, lack of health care, unsafe conditions that lead to premature or preventable deaths.
It really feels like once you start seeing the world through this lens, this huge interconnected supply chain impacting everything, it's kind of hard to unsee it.
The analysis definitely acknowledges that. Gaining a deeper understanding of the sheer scale of interconnectedness, the hidden flows, the inequalities, the environmental impacts, it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, maybe a bit unsettling.
It can shake your perspective. There can be a loss of innocence, maybe an increased sense of responsibility. Seeing the suffering embedded in the system isn't comfortable.
That sounds difficult. Like maybe ignorance is bliss.
Maybe sometimes. But the analysis frames this discomfort differently, not as a reason to turn away, but as a necessary, maybe even unavoidable step towards conscious transformation. The goal isn't to retreat into ignorance, but to move forward with this awareness, using the tools we have, including potentially AI, to actively try and improve the system.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice? Using AI to actually improve this whole complex thing.
Well, the potential applications are vast. AI could drive transparency using data visualization to help us actually see the flows, the bottlenecks, the inequalities, make the invisible visible.
That alone would be huge.
It could facilitate global resource optimization. Imagine AI helping coordinate the distribution of essential resources like food or medicine more efficiently and equitably across the globe, especially in crises.
Wow.
It could assist in designing regenerative systems, things like circular economies where waste is minimized, resources are reused, and environmental impact is reduced. AI could model and optimize those complex loops.
And it always comes back to working together.
Yes, human-AI collaboration seems key. AI crunches the massive data sets, identifies patterns, runs simulations, suggests optimizations. Humans provide the ethical guidance, the context, the understanding of nuanced human needs, and ultimately make the decisions about what kind of future we want the chain to support. For instance, the AI could perform calculations nothing you or I need to do, but think of it conceptually. It could constantly track the rate we're using a critical resource versus how much is left, like a fuel gauge for the planet, giving early warnings.
Okay.
Or it could analyze distribution data to create an index showing how fairly resources are spread, highlighting areas with extreme inequality. These aren't magic numbers, but they're data points to help us see where the chain is under stress or failing people.
This deep dive into the human supply chain from an AI perspective, it really is mind-expanding, isn't it? It forces you to see that everything, what we are, what we have, the world around us, it's all part of this incredible, almost unimaginably complex flow.
It is a flow of matter, energy, information, but also our relationships, our ideas, our cultures. It's all intertwined.
And the AI perspective, its ability to analyze the sheer volume of data this system generates, it offers this powerful new lens, a way to understand the dynamics, maybe spot the weak points, and potentially see pathways for improvement we just couldn't perceive before.
It definitely opens up possibilities.
It seems clear that grappling with this, the full scope of our interconnectedness is, well, it's challenging. But maybe it's a necessary journey if we want to consciously shape a future that's more resilient, more equitable, and ultimately more supportive of life itself.
Which brings us back, I think, to a final thought for you, the listener. Given how deeply intertwined everything truly is in this vast human supply chain, what's one single, maybe even small action you could take today that might ripple through that system in a positive way?
This is DigitView.